I've just publicly published an extensive 32-page biohacking protocol on how I'm regressing my arterial plaque, the thickness of my arteries, and regressing my heart attack and stroke risk. 32 pages just for you. I'm also going to show you something tart in my kitchen. Stay tuned. For those of you new to my channel, my name is Simon. I am a biohacker. I'm 58 years old and I'm on a mission to minimize as much as is possible my heart attack and stroke risk after I got a scan of my arteries in June of 2025 that did not look good. And my mission is to impart whatever knowledge and information I have so that you can minimize your risk of a heart attack and a stroke. #1 killer of men and women in the world by far. So let me cut straight to the chase. I've got a 32-page document, PDF file, for free. You can get, and you can read everything about what I'm doing. I'm talking about diet, lifestyle, supplements, medications. I'm talking about the thinking and reasoning behind my decisions. It's got pages of citations to studies that formed the basis for some of my decisions. If you want that 32-page document, all you have to do in the comments is type the word CARDIORISK.com. It's a website, and obviously it's a not so subtle hint that you go to that website. I have no affiliation with CardioRisk, by the way. That's how you get the report, CardioRisk.com, and I will send you the hyperlink. Here are some of the highlights from that report as generated and objectively assessed by artificial intelligence, the app Perplexity. This report is assessing my results between June of 2025, when I did a CARDIORISK CIMT, an ultrasound of the neck, and when I repeated that same scan in February of 2026. So we're talking about a period of 7.5 months. AI found, and I quote, the patient's CIMT regression rate is approximately 9.6 times faster than the Bale-Deneen benchmark. For those of you who don't know, Bale-Deneen are a very reputable, prestigious preventive cardiology group who have documented their success in regressing intermedia thickness. And what AI is saying is they're assessing my rate of regression of my artery thickening as being 9 times faster than that of this leading preventive cardiology group. And I'm not saying this to wag my own tail. I'm saying this because millions and millions of people are at risk. And if I can do this, you can do this. That's the whole point of my channel. In the conclusion section of the report, AI concludes point #1, dramatic CIMT regression. Point 2, clinically significant plaque burden reduction. Point 3, exceptional arterial age reversal. Point 4, meaningful early event risk reduction. Again, you want the full report, type in the word CardioRisk.com into the comments and I will send you the hyperlink. From page 20 on the report, AI finds these outcomes are genuinely impressive and substantially exceed typical intervention responses. When I set about addressing the problem that I was facing in June of 2025, I was staring down the barrel of, and I still am, increased risk based on my arterial age, the thickening of my arteries, the plaque in my neck arteries. My mind goes along 20 different avenues. What do I need to do in order to regress this plaque, to minimize my risk of a heart attack and a stroke? And I think just like a biohacker, and there's no ideology on anything. So many social media channels, they have an ideology based on diet. Forget that. My ideology is what works, because the statistics are breathtaking. 1.6 million Americans will have a heart attack or a stroke this year. It is the #1 killer of men and women by far. Nothing else even comes close. And here's what's even more staggering to consider. Of those 1.6 million that have a heart attack or a stroke, approximately 20% of them will die. As tragic as that is, one can only hope it happens quickly. But my mind works along the lines of the 80%. What does a life look like if you have a non-fatal stroke or a non-fatal heart attack? To me, it looks like brain damage, sitting in a wheelchair, paralyzed. You can't function. You are maimed for life, compromised for the rest of your life if you have a heart attack or a stroke that doesn't kill you. Why? You know what's so staggering about the cardio risk scans that I promote? There's a number. We're going to get to this later in the video called early event risk. There's a number they give you that tells you your risk relative to other people, your gender and age. We're going to get into that. But folks, listen, there's a lot of health topics out there, thyroid issues. There's a lot of biohackers talking about exosomes and stem cells, all kinds of funky stuff. None of that matters if you're dead. None of that matters if you're brain damaged. None of it matters if you can't get around because you've had a heart attack and you're living in fear of another one. None of that matters. This is the number one killer, the number one thing that will maim you. And there's a scan out there that will tell you if you're at greater risk than the average person your age. Right, let's interrupt this presentation to bring you a biohack. Yes, you've been very good, my darlings. You've already hit the subscribe button and you're already sharing this video to make it go viral. So you deserve a biohack. Let's talk about pomegranate juice.
Pomegranates weren't just some random health food. Ancient Persian and Greek doctors already used them to improve vitality. They just didn't understand why it worked, but they knew that people who ate pomegranates were healthier, and modern scientists finally figured it out. When you eat pomegranates, the bacteria in your gut help to break them down into smaller compounds. At least, if you have the right bacteria, they'll transform those compounds into something called urolithin A. And urolithin A is what actually matters here. This molecule does something your body desperately needs, but it struggles to do on its own as you age. It cleans out those old mitochondria, your dim or dying batteries, and replaces them with fresh ones. And when researchers tested this pomegranate compound called urolithin A on mice, they got dramatic results. The mice lived longer, their muscles stayed strong, their cells stayed healthy, and they aged more slowly.
Biohacking isn't just about drugs, medications, supplements, and all that. No. We've got diet and lifestyle as well. Pomegranate juice. This one is organic, 100% juice, pomegranate concentrate. Why pomegranate juice? Well, because there is scientific research to show that it can reduce carotid intermedia thickness, the thickening of your neck arteries that contributes to your risk of having a stroke. It also helps reduce LDL oxidation and it can help lower blood pressure. Now, is it the holy grail? No, but again, as a biohacker, what we're looking to do is stack different ideas on top of each other when we're talking about plaque regression and artery thickness regression. And this is a great idea. So we've got pomegranate juice. The studies say it can do these wonderful things. There's a problem, is there not? Come on, what's the problem? It's on the back of the label, that's the problem. It says here that one serving size, 8 fluid ounces, contains 35 grams of sugar. What's the point in saving your arteries if you end up diabetic, right? We don't want to be spiking insulin with that amount of sugar. So is there any way we can get all of those benefits of pomegranate juice without the sugar? And the answer is yes. Get your juice, right? Then you need these pills, probiotic yeast pills. The particular variant is called Saccharomyces boulardii. It is a yeast probiotic. It's very, very good for digestion and the gut microbiome. So you can get these from wherever you want to get your probiotic pills. Ooh, quick side note before I forget. This probiotic yeast strain, Saccharomyces boulardii, it's been shown in scientific research to bind to mycotoxins. You can see from the study, Saccharomyces boulardii has demonstrated mycotoxin binding effects, as well as the ability to reverse mycotoxin-induced injury. So folks, we live in a toxic world. Mold gets everywhere, whether it's inside your house, in the wall somewhere hidden, whether it's in the pile of leaves outside your front door, or in healthy foodstuffs. Mold is just part of the world we live in, and these mycotoxins, these spores, get in everything. And so when you consume a probiotic like this, it's just another little health trick that you can use to help detoxify your body. So that's just one more reason on top of the existing reason, which is to get rid of all the sugar in the pomegranate juice and release the polyphenols without any sugar and have all of those heart healthy benefits. Why not get some gut benefits and some mold mycotoxin benefits too? So little health hack. Back to the video. Open up your pomegranate juice. You're going to take just 2 pills. That's all you need. Open up the capsules and put it in the juice. Very, very simple. And what this does, sometimes you might want to transfer this out of this jar and into something with a more stable lid, because this lid isn't necessarily the tightest. Anyway, you tighten it up, whatever bottle you want to use, whether you want to keep it in the original jar or transfer it to a different bottle. You mix it up. You shake it up. That's all you do. And then you leave the lid loose. And what's going to happen over the next 2 to 4 days is that this yeast probiotic is going to ferment the pomegranate juice. And the fermentation process gets rid of all of the sugar. And you can tell when it's done because you basically give it a little bit of a taste test each day. And once it reaches a point where it's really tangy, tart, sour, all the sugar is gone. And what you're left with is all of the polyphenols of the pomegranate juice, the healthy polyphenols, all of the good stuff, none of the sugar. And in fact, you probably increase the count of this probiotic yeast bacteria so that your microbiome gets the benefit as well. So it's a beautiful little simple biohack. You take a sugary juice that you would never normally drink because of the amount of sugar, you eliminate all the sugar, you increase the probiotic yeast count, and you get all the polyphenols and all the benefits that the study shows can help reduce carotid intermedia thickness. There's one thing you got to remember. You absolutely need to keep the lid loose because the fermentation process can carbonate it. There was one time when I started doing this about 6 months ago, and it was in a glass bottle. I had the lid on tightly. In the middle of the night, there was an explosion in the living room. Just think that the glass bottle just shattered everywhere. So please, you have to keep the lid on loose. Once a day or twice a day, I'll tighten the lid just to shake it up a couple of times a day to make sure that the bacteria is moving around the juice. Again, it's just between 2 and 4 days and you just do a taste test. So that's all you do, right? I've got one prepared here. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Slightly frothy because there is a slight carbonation to it. This one I think was left for about almost 4 days. I like to leave it really, really long. And you don't need to have much. Just have it with dinner or the meal. Cheers. Oh man, that, ladies and gentlemen, is tart. That's the biohack. Let's take a study. Let's take an idea to help reduce our neck artery thickness, help lower blood pressure, help with LDL oxidation, and let's biohack it to get rid of all the sugar and help with our gut microbiome. Back to the presentation. Now, I wanted to make that video in my kitchen because when you read the 32-page protocol, you're going to see a lot of supplements, medications, and things that I'm doing. And I want you to understand that diet and lifestyle come first. Always, always first. Everything else that I do is stacked on top of diet and lifestyle. So if you want more biohacks in the kitchen, just drop a comment to that effect. But do get a hold of the report. Again, it's CARDIORISK.com in the comments, and I'll email you the hyperlink. There's a lot of influencers out there spreading a lot of terrible information when it comes to preventing heart attacks and strokes. There are folks that are educating, so-called educating, and inferring things like you can have very high LDL, very high ApoB, and it depends on the context, and it might not be a big deal if you're insulin sensitive. I consider all of that awful. Absolutely awful because it's not where the science is. Let's contrast my transparency, okay? Because you're not going to find another channel like mine. I've publicly posted on my main YouTube channel in the description box every scan I've ever done of my arteries. I'm talking about my coronary arteries, scans like coronary artery calcium scan, CT angiogram, several CIMTs, all in the description box of my YouTube channel on the recent videos. Name one other influencer or educator doing this. I profile Ken Berry, you know, the keto doctor, on a recent video. He said he was going to go get scans done. No evidence of him doing any scans. Let's talk about another keto doctor, Dr. Nick Norwitz, because he's saying some interesting things about allegedly being transparent. Let's just see what he says on the subject.
Since I've chosen to be radically open about my personal health journey, this was a decision I made early on in my public life, I do feel an obligation to explain why I've made the choices I've made, and why I do not expect you to do the same. Instead of medicating as the default, I've chosen to just track my own plaque status using imaging. So far, my coronary CT angiography shows no plaque, calcified or otherwise. Now, admittedly, I'm just shy of 30, but with LDL cholesterol as high as mine, 574, many would expect measurable disease. Honestly, if I had homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, I'd probably be dead. And yet, to date, my arteries are as clean as a whistle.
Here's the thing about Nick Norwitz, okay? He has some interesting content, but when he talks about himself being publicly transparent and how he's had a CT angiogram done at the age of 29 or 30, how he has no plaque, That doesn't mean anything. And first of all, where's the PDF? Can we get that? I mean, you can get all my PDFs. Where's his? It doesn't mean anything because you wouldn't expect to see plaque, actual plaque, in a 29 or 30-year-old. So that doesn't mean a whole lot. The scan he hasn't published, and I've encouraged him to publish this, is the one that I promote, is the carotid intima media thickness scan. It's the ultrasound of the neck. For several reasons, I consider this the best scan. First and foremost, there is zero radiation. These coronary artery scans all come with radiation. Who's going to do that and subject themselves to a needless cancer risk? You can't track your plaque on a regular basis with those kinds of scans because of the radiation. A CT angiogram, between $2,000 to $3,000 they inject you with dye. It's not a scan you can repeat that often. CINT, the ultrasound of the neck, no radiation. Do it as often as you like to track your progress, which is why it's my favorite scan. And it checks for non-calcified plaque because a coronary artery calcium scan, which is the other one people talk about, that does not check for non-calcified plaque. And listen, it's non-calcified plaque that's the dangerous kind. Calcified plaque is the stable kind, so that scan is flawed. I like CIMTs, but just going back to Norwitz and the plaque issue, a CIMT, the one from CARDIORISK, it gives you more information than just plaque burden, which is a key part of the report. That's true. Also is the intima media thickness, your artery age. But there's a number on the report, and let's just pull my scan report up from June of 2025, the one that spooked me. You can see here that my early event risk number is 1.8 in green. So in theory, my early event risk is okay, it's good, right? It says green. That doesn't mean anything. I'm going to do a whole detailed breakdown video on how to actually interpret these different parts of a cardio risk scan report because there is some nuance to it. Early event risk refers to the prospect of having an event, heart attack or a stroke, within the next 5 years, give or take a couple of years. That's what that means. So when I had that scan done at the age of 57, the fact that they're telling me, we don't think, Simon, you're going to have a heart attack or stroke in the next 5 years, isn't that meaningful to me? Because I'm kind of thinking I might want to live beyond the age of 62. I might not want to have a heart attack in the next 5 years and then be maimed for life until I die at the age of 80 or whatever it is. So early event risk being green doesn't mean anything. What matters about that number is whether or not you're above 1.0. Again, I will do a full breakdown on all the different component parts of the cardio risk scan because 1.0 in the early event risk box is the baseline hazard ratio. In other words, that is the quote unquote normal risk, the average risk of a heart attack or a stroke for someone your age and gender. So any number above 1.0, and you can see mine was 1.8, which is 80% worse than the baseline hazard ratio. Any number above 1.0 means you are at greater risk of a heart attack or a stroke than the typical average male or female of your age. That's what it means. The fact that it might be in the green for early event risk just means we don't think it's going to happen in 5 years. Point being, if you're above 1.0, it's like them signaling it's coming. The heart attack or the stroke is coming. You're cruising towards it. You're just not speeding towards it. Because folks, listen, the 1.6 million heart attacks and strokes that happen every year, the 20% that die and the 80% that live a maimed life, who do you think it happens to? It happens to those who are at greater risk than the average for their gender and age. So if you get a cardio risk scan done, and by the way, if you've not figured out, I'm going to nag you until you get this scan done. It's that important. If you're above 1.0, you know you are cruising, just not speeding towards that heart attack and that stroke. So going back to the Nick Norwitz situation, the issue with him isn't whether or not he has plaque at the age of 29 or 30. One wouldn't expect that. The issue is, where is his risk relative to other young men aged 30? And the early event risk number will tell him that and tell us that. Either he's above 1.0, meaning he's at greater risk than the average typical 30-year-old male, or he's below 1.0, at lower risk. Same thing with intima media thickness, which directly correlates to artery age. Are his arteries thicker than the typical average 30-year-old male, which is a separate thing to plaque? He's not published this. He's not told us. He just says, well, my CT angiogram's clear. That doesn't mean anything at the age of 30. The fact that he hasn't done a CIMT, hasn't publicized it, hasn't promoted it, tells me he's not being transparent. Because to be truly transparent means to hold yourself accountable to your peers. You can see from my scan of June of 2025, at the age of 57, my early event risk is 1.8. I'm at significantly higher risk than the average 57-year-old male. So I said to myself, right, what the heck do I need to do? I've got to turn this train around. I'm cruising towards a stroke. And that's the other thing about why you need to get a CIMT done. The coronary scans, the CT angiograms and the calcium scans, just check your heart attack risk. They don't say anything about your stroke risk. Remember, the numbers are about split. 800,000 will have a stroke, 800,000 will have a heart attack. Well, there might be discordance. When you look at my scan results, the plaque in my coronary arteries is actually quite modest. It's not that bad. But my neck arteries, the carotid arteries, are a lot worse. That tells me I'm at higher risk of a stroke than a heart attack. And you need to know that. You need to know if you're at higher risk of a stroke than a heart attack. You need to know your early event risk. You gotta get this scan done. Listen, folks, my channel exists to share information and give ideas. When you read this report, I'm not suggesting that you just do everything that I am doing in it. Clearly, talk to your medical professionals. This is about idea generation. This is about making you think. This is about seeing the thought process I went through when facing the prospect of having a stroke at some point later in my life and what I'm doing about it, so that you can maybe even take inspiration or get some ideas. If you want to talk to me directly, the best way of reaching me through direct message is through Substack. I have an email newsletter. You go to simonthebiohacker.substack.com. Sign up for my email newsletter. You can direct message me. Happy to talk to you through there. If you like this video, do me a favor, click the subscribe button and share it with everyone you know. Let's have this go viral, because I'm the only person that you're going to find on social media that is publicly posting his own artery scans, holding himself accountable, telling you everything that I'm doing. Hope you like the video. I will see you next time.